folks. Welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Today we have what I feel is a very exciting video. And I know that the subject to some people might be considered boring, but I think this is very exciting. And I know that many of you are going to be very excited because you've asked me questions about this. I've received your emails asking about what this gold bank is, this non-Federal Reserve bank. There's a lot of curiosity out there. And so I've been really anticipating doing this video because I am doing this video with two men that are on the board of directors, the executive board for UPMA. They help run the place. And so, I figure might as well get answers directly from the head of this organization. And so that's what we've done today. So sit back and listen. There's going to be a lot of information in this video. So it may be one that you're going to watch a couple of times to get it all. But there's some really good information. And these two gentlemen that have joined us today are very good guys. I mean, they know their stuff, and they are definitely like-minded individuals. Okay, when it comes to freedom, constitutional-based freedoms, I know these two guys are right there. So without further ado, we have, as you can see on your screen, we have Mark Hilton and Jeff Allen. Mark, let's start off with you. Can you kind of give us a little background, what you do at UPMA, and just maybe whatever you feel comfortable with your personal background?
Sure, thank you, and it's a real pleasure to be here, Travis. Appreciate the invitation. So I'm the president and CEO of Alpine Gold. We service the UPMA, so we're one of the companies that help really make the UPMA vision come to life and to really focus on the operational side. So I'm day-to-day, full-time, helping that work. I work with the UPMA board of directors, and Jeff will talk. He's one of our board members, and so that's my full-time occupation right now is making this happen, and it's exciting to see it grow and see what's going on. My background is I'm an engineer by training, mechanical engineer, and I was an aerospace engineer for 10 years. Then I went into more technology on the product management, which is sort of strategic marketing, kind of figuring out what to build and why to build it and how much to charge and how to market. And I was in a number of different industries, including media technology and networking, test and measurement, and so forth. So I've done a lot of different things, but yeah, I have degrees in engineering and business, and been involved in this financial services side of things here for the last several years, and it's something I'm very passionate about, and it's like I say, exciting to be involved. So that's just kind of a quick summary, and we can jump over to Jeff.
That one works. Yeah, Jeff, go ahead and fill us in on your relationship with UPMA and maybe a little background, whatever you feel comfortable sharing with the folks.
Well, Happy New Year, Travis and Mark.
Same to you, sir.
You both again. As was mentioned, I serve on the board of trustees for UPMA. But, maybe more importantly is I have like 3 accounts with UPMA. I have a personal account, and I also have a entity account, and also have a trust account. I'm my dad's guardian, and so we have some of my dad's assets involved with UPMA. And what I think is just brilliant about it is, everything that Travis was talking about us being like-minded and constitutionally oriented. At UPMA, I can buy and sell using gold and silver and never touch the fiat money system. And I think that advances more, or at least creates an environment where we can advance our constitutional rights and be able to, live in this, what do we call it, Mark? A constitutional free market economy or something? What's the better way to describe it? Something like that.
Yes.
Well, and you know what else? Yeah. I might have mentioned this to you, Travis, but a few weeks ago, I actually took a tour of the vault.
Oh,
And
yes,
so,
you did. You mentioned that to me.
right. So there's like this is the gold and silver. It's there. Every thing is 100% backed. Every account. And I've been down in the vault, and it's highly secure, and it's there. There's gold and silver, tons of it.
That would be pretty cool to see. Now, I know that there's some of my listeners that have no clue what we're talking about when we say UPMA. What are we talking about? Why do you have these bank guys on here? All this kind of stuff. Well, let's kind of tell the people what UPMA is, because it's like a bank. It is a bank, but it's not a Federal Reserve bank. It's a gold-backed bank. So either one of you want to jump in and kind of just give us a brief overview of what UPMA is.
Well, it first of all, it stands for United Precious Metals Association.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a group of individuals. It's an association with bylaws and an organization to really promote the use of other types of legal tender beyond U.S. federal notes. And what a lot of people don't realize is, per the Constitution and the laws of our nation, there are actually 5 different types of legal tender. We tend to focus on the paper money that is issued by the Federal Reserve Bank. But that's just one of 5. There's also gold, silver, platinum coins that are minted by the U.S. Mint and are considered legal tender. And there's also base metal coins that sort of similar to the federal notes that kind of complement that. So, the focus really is a group of citizens who are passionate about sound money, meaning money that is, well, it's really money. It's not just currency. So the difference between money and currency is it's a store of value. You can have a currency and it's not a store of value, meaning it devalues. And this is what we typically see with fiat currency, which is fiat currency meaning not necessarily backed by anything. It's just currency by dictate,
right?
By the sovereign powers that be. And so our focus is on legal tender currencies, but gold and silver specifically. And that's really so the UPMA, again, is an association. It's nonprofit. It's we have, I don't know, Jeff, how many members? Over 30,000 account holders. Now, some of those, I think we're close to 40, but some have multiple accounts, as Jeff mentioned. He does, I do. And so that's, in a nutshell, what the UPMA is. It was organized for that purpose in, I think, 2012, sort of following on a legal tender act that was passed in the state of Utah, and it came out of that. Used to actually be called Citizens for Sound Money, and then changed its name to UPMA.
Awesome. So, when we talk about a bank, people hear a precious metal association. How does it function, like a bank? So how would it work for, all 3 of us here have accounts with UPMA. And so we know because we have an account, but for people that have no clue what we're talking about in this concept of having a bank that is actually gold and silver backed, it's backed. Your money is actually, in gold and silver in UPMA. So when I take $10, if I went into UPMA right now and I had a $10 Federal Reserve note and deposited that into my account, it gets converted over to either gold or silver by choosing. And so then there's that amount of gold and silver of mine in your vaults. Is that correct? I mean, I know I'm simplifying it, but isn't that correct?
Yeah, that's it. Exactly. Yeah. You start, normally people will start with dollars or federal notes. The money that you're exchanging it to is still called a dollar. It's a gold dollar or it's a silver dollar, but it's legal tender in a different form.
Right.
And so that's why we're called Alpine Gold Exchange, because we provide the exchange and the liquidity to allow the back and forth between fiat currency and sound money. And that's exactly right. So you start with paper, and you can deposit that in any number of ways. and then you have an account that is on our online portal that all members have access to. You can see your account balance, and that So you're right. We're not a bank in the traditional sense of a chartered bank.
Mm-hmm.
We are organized as a trust escrow organization, and so I can go into that in a little more detail of how we're organized. But just to answer your high level question, we're kind of like a bank, but we're not a bank. So we're a lot of bank like functions.
Right.
You kind of get back to what is a bank, right? Well, it's a place to put my money. Hopefully it stays safe. I can access it when I need it.
Right.
Maybe I can get a little return by putting into some kind of savings account. That's what people want with a bank, right? It's a safe place to put their money and to hopefully hold on to it.
Right.
And we do that. We do the same thing.
UPMA does offer a way to use it, and we'll get into that here in just a minute. I want to save that for just a little bit later, but there is a way. A lot of people are saying, so this is no different than just vaulting your gold and silver. Well, you can do that in a lot of places, but this is different. That's the difference here with UPMA through Alpine Gold, is that there is a difference because there's a way for you to daily access that. I can go down right now to my local gas station and I can put gas in my car and I can pay for it with my gold and silver that is in UPMA. And we'll talk about that here in just a minute. But let's get through some of the initial questions with people, because I know that, like you said, this is, even though it's not that unusual, this is actually very similar, as far as I can understand, exactly how banks used to be when the banks first came along. It was only gold and silver. And so you would take your gold and your silver because you didn't want to be walking around with 3 pounds of gold in your pocket,
Right.
So you would pay someone, or initially you would pay, and then eventually that's how we get the fractional reserve and all that kind of stuff. But the point is, you would put your money into a safe place, and then you would write checks off of it, and eventually currency came along. So the original progression of banking really started out this way.
That's right.
And the big difference is now we have technology that you guys have implemented and incorporated into it, so it makes it easier. So it's not like you guys are sitting there on your computer printing off some type of your own currency. We have technology that does that. Is this legal? That's going to be one of the immediate questions. How is this legal? How can you do this? And people can use the money, and you can store it. How is this legal? Is it legal, or are we doing something that's a little shady?
No, it's definitely legal. This was, our whole structure was put together by our general counsel currently, who was the founder of UPMA. And he also was the one who sort of co-authored the Utah Legal Tender Act of 2011. So it's all based on existing laws. There are cases where we've lobbied and participated in the legislative process to strengthen the position that we have here. But it all starts really with the Constitution, right? It's hard to get more legal than that. This is, we're using gold and silver, which was the intent of the founding fathers, not to use fiat currency. They hated fiat currency. They had all just come out of a period of rampant inflation in all the colonies. And if you read all the notes, not just the Constitution, but all the dialogue and so forth that went on at that time, that was the last thing that they wanted.
Right.
And so this is completely legal. We're using, we're not regulated like a bank. We're regulated like a trust company. And so all the assets are held in trust. They're kept, the ownership is kept by the individual account holders. Honestly, unlike a bank, where when you deposit funds, you give up some of the ownership rights to those funds. A lot of people don't realize that, but in terms of access to that, you're giving up some of your sovereignty in that sense for the supposed benefits you get from a bank. So in this case, it's held in trust, and we use the UPMA is a limited cooperative association as well. So the ability to move money back and forth between members is completely legal because it's a closed network of individuals who are participating in this under a set of bylaws. We do not have a money transmitter license, which is required to be a bank, meaning we're not acting as an intermediary to move money from Travis to Jeff. The two of you through our platform can have a direct relationship. Say, I'm just gonna work with you, Jeff, leveraging my money that's held in trust and using this platform to move money back and forth. That's one of the methods that the money that can be used.
Right.
But again, it's also legal tender. So it has been identified by the federal and state governments to be used for the payment of taxes and debts. So yeah, it's definitely legal. And one of the main functions UPMA performs is to make sure all the operations are on the up and up. That's why we have a board of directors. They do regular audits of the holdings, of the accounts, and it's a separate entity from the operational company, which I run, to make sure that it's all, fully legal and transparent.
Right. And one thing I want to clarify for my listeners is that when you guys say that your money is being put in UPMA in gold and silver, it's actual physical gold and silver. Jeff mentioned when he was saying that he actually went to the vault and saw. So we're not talking derivatives. We're not talking paper gold and silver. That's correct? I mean, I know that, but I want my listeners to understand. Jeff, there's real gold and silver there. So the money that you were talking about and the accounts that you have,
right, there are all those minted coins, either gold or silver coins minted by the U.S. Treasury, all stored in the vault. And it's dollar for dollar for every account that exists, and whatever that value is, there is that physical gold sitting in the vault.
Right. So it's not that, you're not buying paper gold and silver, which isn't real gold and silver. It's a physical and it's yours. So if I have, 2 ounces or two gold dollars in UPMA, and I go there physically and I want to withdraw that, can I withdraw can I take 2 physical gold dollars out? Like, I mean,
absolutely.
however it works.
Yeah.
So it's physical money that's there, real money, constitutional money, not paper money, not a derivative of gold and silver. It's the real deal.
We like to say God's money.
Yes, God's money. Yes, I was thinking that earlier. We think of it constitutional, but the only reason we say constitutional is because that's based on God's money, God's concept of how money works. Jeff, can you go also? How safe is? Because you mentioned the security procedures. So there's the physical security. This isn't something that anyone can just go in and take your gold and silver out. So there's physical security, but also about is your money insured or protected anyway? Is people they fall back to FDIC. Well, my local bank, it's FDIC insured. How does UPMA? Because obviously they're not FDIC insured if they're not a bank. So whichever one of you want to jump in.
Yeah, I'll let you handle that, Mark.
Yeah, sure. So I think it's important to point out first, kind of just going back a little bit. You think about the original idea of banks is you deposit your money, it stays there, and you pay fees for it, but it's there. And then we ended up with this, what we call fractional reserve, which means only a fraction of it is actually there.
Right.
So it's being used by the bank to make money, to loan it out to other people and so forth. So we have, as Jeff saw, we have what we call 100% reserve gold and silver. So it's not fractional. It's 100%, meaning if we add up all the accounts that we have, all the quote liabilities, that's how much gold and silver we have. Now we have it in a couple different places. Some of it is at Brinks, but the majority of it is at our own owned and operated vault, which is based in Utah. We have about $250,000 security system on that. And it's for those who care, it's a class 2 vault, which means it'll take you, a long time to try to drill through that thing. It's underground. So it's in a very secure location.
Yes.
Not one individual can get in there by themselves. It takes a team of people coordinating. And so it's very secure, and it's driven by the insurance policy that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So we have 100% insurance on all those holdings. So you compare that to FDIC, which insures, depending on the bank, up to 100,000. I think for savings and loans, 250,000. So if you have more than that, you could potentially lose that. In fact, we have members who have lost hundreds of thousands of dollars by holding their money in banks. During the 2008 crash, there were banks that went bankrupt, and they lost their money. The unfortunate thing about the FDIC is it really only insures about 2% of holdings, 1% to 2%.
Yes.
Right. So we insure 100%. So right there is a pretty different, quite a
Big difference. Yeah. If if the banking system collapsed, you're not getting, if you've had 200,000 in your bank account and it's insured for up to 250, but if all the banks, or at least lots and lots of them, you wouldn't get most likely 200,000 because they don't have it.
Now, what might happen, what would probably happen is the government would just print the money.
Yeah, probably.
And then, it would devalue everybody's money.
Devalue even more. Yes.
Right. So we've seen that happen multiple times. So sorry for that,
No.
Going back, but basically, yes, it's insured. We use Lloyd's of London. So it's a very reputable insurance company, knows how to do these kinds of things. And they work collaboratively with us to say, well, this is what we want to insure you at this point. You need to have this kind of security system, these kind of procedures. They can audit us to make sure. And we're actually expanding right now. We're adding to that insurance policy because we're opening up some branches. And we need to insure those sites as well. So we're continually, and we're shipping worldwide, the money for people like you say who want to just get the physical. We do some shipping as well, and those are insured shipments.
Right. I want to show something. I should have had this pulled out, but it's in my wallet because this is the next thing I'd like to talk about, because I'm sure people are pretty curious at this point. This here, let me show you on the camera here. This is my UPMA debit card, and you can't see the number, so it's okay. Let me get it closer. You can see down here at the bottom, it says UPMA. So this is like an ATM debit card. And when I said earlier that it's not just that your money is being put in there for safekeeping, you can actually use it on a daily basis. And I think for a lot of people, this is a big deal. I mean, sure, you may want to have your funds put in a trust for whatever reason. Maybe, like Jeff was saying, it's his father's trust, or maybe you just sold a home. But a lot of people are wondering, well, what about just daily use? And so this right here, if I'm understanding, is the big key. I mean, it's a big deal. And I'm not aware of any other entity that has this option when it comes to gold and silver.
Yeah. So the way that works is that's a partnership that we have with a debit card company. You can see it said Visa on there. So the point, of course, is, as I mentioned, if you're two UPMA members, you can just transfer gold and silver back to your accounts, right?
Right. And that's easy. It's just simple as just click of a button.
Yeah, and you're spending your gold in that sense. There's a couple other ways you can spend gold, but 99.9% of all merchants, worldwide, accept Visa and credit cards, and that's just how the world currently works. Sure.
So whether you like it or not, that's just the reality. Yeah.
So we need to interface to that world, and so we offer the ability for two ways to put some value on there. You can either liquidate a portion of your metals, and we will through our exchange, we will put paper money on there. Essentially, it's
Mhm.
representing a certain amount of paper money, but you can keep your wealth in a safe place that is resistant to inflation,
Mhm.
as opposed to a bank, which is not resistant.
Right.
We'll get into leases in a moment, how you can
Sure.
actually get a return on that. But you want to go out and spend it. You want to buy groceries. You want to, do the basic things we have to do every day. So you can either liquidate it. We'll do that, or you can actually, to a limited amount, you can have kind of a collateralized loan for the gold that you have on there.
Mhm.
So you're not actually liquidating. You're not selling your gold. You're keeping that, but it's essentially a loan, and you do pay a small fee for that of what we call 0.2 basis points, which is
Mhm.
like over a year, that's about 2.5 percentage points. So it's not very expensive from a loan perspective, but you're essentially borrowing it against your own assets.
Right.
And so we can do either of those methods to spend the money and put it in a form that can be accepted by any merchant.
Right.
So that's a key piece, obviously, to the whole solution of
Mhm.
being able to spend it.
Right. So they would, um, like I have done in the past, you can call directly, or there's through the web portal, which their web portal, UPMA's web portal, is really not any different than any other bank that you've probably ever been to. You can do all the basic similar functions. And so through their web portal, you can do what he was saying is liquidate. You can choose. So I will say this because there's going to be confusion. There has been with people I've talked to. So if you have however much you have in your UPMA account, and let's say it equates to $500 in Federal Reserve notes, that doesn't mean you just immediately have that amount on this card. So
Right.
you would have to either email or phone call or use their web portal to have them liquidate a certain amount. So if you want to spend you're going to spend $100 this week in gas, and you want to use this card, you can have them liquidate $100 of your gold or silver and then apply it to this card. And
Right.
then you have that money on this card, that currency. Is my correct in that?
Yeah, that's right. The other way that people like to do it is they sort of estimate their monthly expenditures that they would
Mhm.
use that card for, and they can just tell us at the beginning of every month, top
Right.
it up to a certain amount. So if that number is 500, we'll just, whatever you've spent. Let's say you spent only 250, then we'll put another 250 on there to
Mhm.
bring it up to 500. It could be 5,000. It just depends on your spending profile, but
Sure.
we can do that sort of on the first of the month, just so you always have money. Now, if you happen to spend more in a particular month than you normally would, and you start approaching zero balance, then that's when you would call us or contact us in some way, email
Right.
or then and say, can you please put another 500 on there?
Right.
Uh,
Something comes up and,
exactly.
right. So that's a big deal. That way people can, go out and do their normal shopping, their normal business, and they can actually um, take their money and put it in UPMA so that it's, it is in a sense a bank for them. Even
Right.
and it functions, even though the inner workings, the legal aspect of it is different than a traditional bank nowadays. How the average person is seeing it and using it feels much like a bank, and it's so much more secure, and it's constitutional God's money. So it it makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, you had mentioned the leasing, and then Jeff had mentioned trust. So can we kind of go over the lease and the trusts, because that's another aspect of what UPMA does.
So can I just also mention that
Sure.
to open an account, you don't need to disclose your social security
That's
number
true.
or any other kind of tax ID number. And, if somebody wanted to kind of just live within that sound money system,
Hmm.
as long as they're transacting with other folks that have UPMA accounts, they can buy and sell anything,
Right.
cars, houses, anything that they want, and never have to enter the fiat money system in any way.
Right.
And then what you're pointing out, Travis, is that, because we do still have to live kind of in the real world, there's a way to keep our value in UPMA, except for just what we need for like monthly expenses by using that debit card.
Right. So if I purchase something from Jeff and he lives in another state, so he's going to have to mail it to me. Maybe it's a book. Okay. And he says he wants $20, 20 US dollars for it. I can go on to my account and figure out, how much that is going to be through the web portal. And I can transfer it it's just about instantly over to Jeff's. It is instantly. I mean, I think you have to receive it. Don't you have to click confirm?
Both sides have to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You have to acknowledge it, but it is instant. And so my 20 US dollars of Federal Reserve note value has now been transferred over to Jeff. So I've just bought it. It's no different than if I got on PayPal and I sent you or Cash App or, any of these other, digital services to transfer money. It works the same way. So if the more and more people, especially, like here we have our little local community. If you have a local group, local community, and they're all on UPMA, have all of them are members there, they could do all kinds of transacting amongst themselves and completely outside of the Federal Reserve System.
And not reported really to the IRS or government entities. It's all done through that trust.
Right. And because of how it's set up, you're not required to record people's Social Security numbers, which, as all my listeners should know, that's the key thing that attaches you to the tax system.
Yeah. I mean, this isn't about evading taxes and so forth. It's really about privacy and not having to disclose your financial situation to federal agencies that don't need it.
Sure.
There's just so much data out there, and a lot of it gets abused. So this allows people to take control back.
Mm-hmm.
It's up to every sovereign citizen to work out their tax situation. We don't necessarily advise people on their taxes and so forth, but we don't report it. We're not required to report. There's no 1099s. There's no, we're not sending anything to the IRS. The only one thing that we do that we have to comply with is what's called AML, anti-money laundering. So if people are sending us large amounts of cash to convert, or they're bringing it in and so forth, now that can, we're just talking paper cash, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not like wired funds from a bank or a check. Those are all unlimited amounts. But if you want to carry in more than $10,000 in cash and give it to us, we do have to report that.
Okay.
Is that on a monthly basis or something? Or
well, the law is written a little vague. It's basically saying per transaction, so they don't, you can't break up a transaction into lots of $10,000, chunks. We have adopted the rule. It's about over 1 month. Is kind of how we look at that. But we have to fill out this CTR report, cash transaction report, that goes to the financial crime entity somewhere in Washington, D.C., I'm sure, and they collect all this information. So it's better not to pay a lot of things in paper cash just for that reason, because they're looking for, drug lords and things and whatnot.
Right.
So, but that's basically it in terms of the reporting that we make to the federal government. It's really, that's the only thing we have to do.
Yeah.
If you think a little bit farther down the road, and Travis, if I'm going too far afield, just let me know.
Go right ahead.
Historically, gold and silver have held their value. So
Right.
The amount of gold it would have taken 200 years ago to buy a dozen eggs, it's basically the same today. And so when we think in terms of the value of gold, what we're really doing is we're thinking about, well, how much Federal Reserve notes does it take to buy some gold or silver? That's what's being fluctuated.
Mm-hmm.
And, the people who control the banking system, they have a vested interest in manipulating that. And so, as we get more and more people who join the sound money system, we might even stop thinking in terms of, well, how many Federal Reserve notes am I going to sell this book for? But, how many ounces or what portion of an ounce of gold or silver am I offering this book for? And that gets paid. And so then we completely get away from that fiat central banking system and truly living within a sound money economy.
Yes, absolutely. Because gold and silver, like you said, they're not really, especially gold. It's not really changing in value. It's the
Right.
currency you're using to purchase it that's changing in value.
Yeah,
Exactly. Well, a good analogy is, if you're on a boat and you're looking at a lighthouse, it looks like, and it's wavy out, it looks like that lighthouse is going up and down.
Mm-hmm.
People tend to think that they're on this stable thing called the federal notes, which is really a boat going up and down on the ocean. And they're looking at gold and it's bouncing up and down, where in reality, gold is the thing that's fixed in terms of purchasing power.
Right.
And the manipulation, the dynamics of the international monetary system makes the dollar relative to the gold bounce around a bit. Right. So, but it's really, it's that purchasing power that is really what matters.
Right.
And, since we went off the gold standard, that you think about 50 years ago, we went off the gold standard, 51 now, or 52, I guess. It costs about 1 gold ounce to buy a nice suit, which was $35. Right? Now, a nice suit is, a really nice, let's call it an Italian silk suit or something. It's like $1,800 probably.
Right.
Something. So that's essentially, you still are able to buy the same amount of stuff with gold, but it's
right.
The dollar amount has drastically changed over that period of time.
Right. And people, they, if they're checking the value, the daily, numbers on gold and silver, of course, it goes up and down, up and down. But over time, like you said, gold holds its value. So if you took $500 Federal Reserve dollars back in 1970 and went and converted it over to gold, how much would that gold be worth now? Well, it'd be worth thousands of dollars, even though, you've used 500 to buy it. And so that's another advantage of UPMA is that, when you're saying that it's not just that it's secure because it's backed by Lloyd's of London and you have a very high-tech secured vault and all that kind of stuff. It's secure because it's outside of the inflation system. It's outside of the debt-based currency, which is what we have today. It's all debt-based. We have almost $32 trillion in national debt, trillions and trillions of dollars, hunting probably dozens and dozens of trillions of dollars of global debt. And gold and silver is outside of all of that. It's not based in any of that. So it's when these gentlemen are saying it's sound money, it's constitutional money, it's God's money, that's true. They're not speaking, they're not, making something up. It's really what it is. And so many people, I think they're not teaching it in school. I mean, they're most certainly not teaching these types of sound money concepts in school. They're not even teaching it on a college level. I mean, it's been years since I've been, but I would guess that very few colleges today are really teaching these types of concepts at a college level. And it's sad that people don't understand that. Let's see. I've got some notes here. So let's go back and talk about like trusts. You mentioned leasing and kind of incorporating that of depositing. So how people, I want to start an account, which it's very, very easy to do. Like Jeff said, you don't even need a social security number. It's super easy. I said something the other day, and I think it's probably true. I might actually try it out just to see if it's true, but I think it probably wouldn't take any longer to start a UPMA account than it would to open up a brand new Facebook account or something like that. It's very, very easy. Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's less than 5 minutes for sure.
Right. So how would let's say I open up an account today and I have money in my bank. It's the bank of something, and I want to take the money out of those Federal Reserve notes that's held in that bank and I want to move it into UPMA. What are, because I know there's several ways. What are some of the ways that average individual, maybe they're not moving tens of thousands of dollars, they got $1,000 in their account and they want to move it over to UPMA?
Yeah, there's basically four different ways to do it to fund the account. So you open the account and it's unfunded. There's no cost. There's no fees to have an account. But if you want to fund it, then you can either write us a check, and you would go into your account and just say, I want to deposit funds. You would click on the left-hand side, and then it'll ask you, how do you want to fund it? And it lists those four methods. First, or one of them is write a check. And then you'll tell us immediately in that same form, once we receive that check, what do you want us to do with it? We don't tend to hold money in paper form for people. It comes in and we convert it to one of our three supported currencies. That's gold coins, silver coins, and something we haven't talked about here, which is a legal tender instrument, a gold back. Now, a gold back is it looks like a note, but it's actually made of gold. And there's different amounts of gold in there. There's one right there. And so this is a supported currency from the UPMA. They've officially adopted that as one of the currencies. So you would say, I want to take my $500 and I want to split it between all three of those, or I want to put it all into gold. You can also tell us how quickly you want us to buy the gold, because there's something called dollar cost averaging, which allows you, because of the ship bouncing up and down, you don't want to buy at the worst possible time, because it's going to vary every day. So a lot of folks will say, just buy it over a week, 2 weeks, a month are the main options, or immediately, first thing tomorrow, get it, because I'm worried that the exchange rate's going to drop or whatever. So we'll follow those instructions once we receive your funds. So checking is one. A wire, of course, you can send to our bank, and then we use those funds. And right now we're using Wells Fargo, so it would be a wire from your bank to Wells Fargo. You can also, of course, give us cash. You can use a credit card or a debit card as well online. So any of those methods work just as well. As soon as we receive them, we put them as a positive balance in as paper. And then over time, you see your paper balance going down and your gold balance going up, or it could happen immediately depending on how you tell us to buy it.
Right.
So that's the basic mechanism of getting gold into your account, and then it's held as that. And you can exchange from one type to another over time. We'll go into that. There are some limits on that because of just the liquidity required to do that. But basically, to answer your question, that's how you fund an account.
Right. So it's not hard.
Not hard to do it. No, people do it all the time, and we can certainly help you. There are ways to fund. A special type of funding is if you have an IRA. So you got your retirement account, and you want to keep it in a retirement account. There's a way to bring that in, and that's kind of a special type of account that limits what you can do with it, because it needs to be managed by the trustee of that. So we are not we're not a trustee for IRAs, but we partner on that.
Okay.
So and this is where a lot of people keep their wealth, right, is in IRAs and associated retirements, and as well as some federal or government pension plans. So you would open a self-directed IRA with presumably the company that we partner with called AccuPlan, and then they would send us the funds. We would open the account in your name, and then you can look at it. You can put it into a lease, which we still need to talk about. You can do some basic exchanges, but you can't withdraw it without telling the trustee, because then there would be a tax implication for doing so.
Right.
So that's a different kind of account, and you just need to tell us, call us up and say, I want this to go into an IRA as opposed to a standard account.
So I've used online using a debit card. I have done bank wires to do funding, and I've also been to one of the bank teller windows and actually brought some cash in. And Mark, I've seen people there who have actually brought some of their own coins in, right? And they can deposit the metal there and then have that value in their UPMA account.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good point. So those four methods I talked about was just really relating to U.S. federal notes in their various forms. People can either bring in, gold eagles, silver eagles, and we'll put them into the system, or they can bring us other types of metals, or they can send it to us. And that's what we call a bailment, where we're converting it, say, from what we call junk silver, which is, silver coins, pre-1965 silver coins. It's legal currency, but, it's only worth the value, legally, it's only worth the value that states on there, the quarter, but it's got much higher value in its metal content.
Mm-hmm.
Or we can take, coins from other countries and so forth, and we basically convert that. We sell it, and then we take the funds from that to purchase the legal tender forms that we support by UPMA. Just those three: silver eagles, gold eagles / gold buffaloes, and then gold backs. So yeah, that's another way to fund, is bring in metals or have it shipped to us. We actually had a guy drive from Nashville with his metals hidden in the back of his minivan, because he was worried about shipping them in the U.S. Postal system. And we counted it for him and deposited it right there, and then he went on his merry way back to Nashville.
I had a friend lose a pretty large shipment of silver he was buying from an individual in the mail. I can't remember the amount, but it was a lot.
I will say we do insure as part of our insurance policy, we have coverage for mailing precious metals. So we can do up to $25,000 per package. And so we just break it down into those increments when people ask us to actually physically send them some of their gold or silver.
We've been mentioning dancing around the leasing.
Yeah.
Talk about that before we kind of wrap this up.
Yeah, let me mention that real quick. So, you think about a bank and you have a checking account and a savings account. The savings account is intended to generate some sort of return. Normally, checking accounts don't. And it's a pretty small return usually. Most of the money that is made from taking that, and honestly, banks will take checking or savings accounts and they'll lend it out through their fractional reserve system. We have what we call a lease, which is kind of like a savings account, but it's basically an agreement between us and the member to use their metals to generate a return, and we share in the benefit of that return. But it's very clear the kind of return you're going to get. It doesn't go into mortgages and so forth. It goes into two main areas, and it generates a return that gets paid back in the base metal or the legal tender precious metal that was leased. So if it's a gold coin, you'll get paid back in more gold coins. If it's gold backs, you'll get paid. And the interest rates we're currently paying are between 1% and 3.5%. And that's actually a pretty good return if you think about the base thing that you're using is essentially inflation proof on the long term, or inflation resistant on the short. So it's what we call a real return as opposed to a nominal return. Nominal is what you measure before inflation, right? So this last year, let's say it was a 10% inflation. In paper money, you'd have to make a 10% return just to break even. Right. Whereas in metals, you could say, you're breaking even by just having it sitting there.
Right.
Now we do have some small fees for vaulting, so there's a small reduction in the tiny basis points, tiny fractions. But if you put into a lease, there's no charges, there's no vaulting fees, and you can get this 1% to 3%. So it's quite good and is comparable to like putting your money in the stock market in some ways, but much more safe.
Right.
So we use that in the case of gold backs. the wholesaler Goldback, we're a retailer of Goldback, so we sell them to the public, but the wholesaler Goldback Incorporated, they will lease those from us, pay us a return, which we then use to pay our members. And they use that as their working capital to manufacture more Goldbacks, because they need gold, obviously, to put into the process.
Right.
Likewise, for gold and silver coins, there's a lot of companies that like to take out either debt or lease gold for their operations.
Mm-hmm.
The jewelry company, a mining company, anybody that's associated that uses gold or silver, they want to have on their books, have their debt in that form, so they are automatically hedged against any sort of exchange rate risk.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's our leasing program. It's anywhere from a 60-day lease up to a year lease. You can get out of the lease with a small fee to exit early, but in general, it's a contract to say, I don't need those metals during that time. I still own them,
Right.
The members still own them, but you're just saying, I'm giving you authorization to get both of us a return on that
Mm-hmm.
metal, as opposed to just having it sitting in the vault. So if it's leased, it does not necessarily need to sit in the vault. It's being
Right.
used for good purposes.
And if I remember correctly, Mark, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but leases are available only for gold coins and for gold backs. Is that right? Not silver.
That's currently true. We do have some silver leases. It kind of comes and goes depending on the market. There's not as much currently developed market for silver leases. But we do have about 6,000 ounces currently in a lease, in a couple different leases. But we temporarily have kind of put that one on pause, just because we don't have the mechanism for putting them into lease. But for gold and goldbacks, there's a much larger market, and so we were able to place those into interest-bearing leases.
Yeah, and so I have leased some gold coin,
Mm-hmm.
and I've also leased gold back. So I'm somebody that's in this and participating in that as well. And then, Travis, one of the things I would like to mention in particular is, if any folks that are listening to this have an interest from the merchant side, right?
Mm-hmm.
They would like to be a merchant that would sell goods and services within the UPMA system. Please let us know, because we're keen on identifying those people, because, lots of people want to buy using gold and silver, but we're looking for those that would also like to sell goods and services.
Yeah. And I will make sure that, because we're going to, the website should show up in the bottom of this video. I'll do that in editing before the video gets shared. So there'll be a website address at the bottom. There'll also be that in the description of the video, so people will be able to get a hold of UPMA. And like you said, yes, businesses also that would like to be part of that network, because like Jeff was saying, if more and more businesses were part of this, then you could, if there's a little hardware store down the road from you and he's part of that, am I correct in theory that I could go, if it was an agreement between me and the hardware store owner, I could go buy lumber from him and use our UPMA account?
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Before we wrap this up, I do want to cover one thing that I know is probably it's on a lot of my listeners' minds, because we talk about this periodically. And that is this coming thing called CBDC, Central Bank Digital Currency. And not only is the UPMA outside of the Federal Reserve System, outside of that inflation system, it's also possible, and of course we don't know fully because the CBDCs aren't here, but they're coming. We don't know fully exactly how it's going to be set up, but it's very likely and possible that UPMA will be able to function outside of that system. Is that correct? Or, I mean, and my understanding is, and if I'm wrong, please someone correct me, that UPMA is well aware of this movement towards the Fed dollar, or the CBDC, and is kind of actively working to protect people, members' accounts and stuff from that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just we set up the system to allow people to have control of their wealth
Hmm.
and to transact and use sound money. This would not be part of that system, any CBDC system at all. That'll be focused. It's our understanding, at least at this point, that it'll be focused on the U.S. federal note system
Hmm.
exclusively. And it's a big concern, I think, for all freedom-loving, liberty-minded people that um, you can and probably will lose control of a lot of your freedoms if
Right.
this is put in place and used inappropriately. The
Hmm.
technology in and of itself isn't necessarily bad. There could be some benefits from it, but the sense is it's being put in place to have more control, more visibility into citizens' financial dealings.
Right.
We've seen, unfortunately, in other countries like China, for sure, it's being used to massively control the public. They
Right.
can shut off your funds. They can take them away. They can limit you to a certain geographic area. If you don't behave, your money just disappears.
Right.
And so
And
that's bad. And that's one reason this type of system is gaining interest. Uh,
right. Yes.
is because of that.
Right. And two other areas of uncertainty, but of huge concern, is that when there is a conversion from, paper Federal Reserve notes into some kind of digital currency, will it be a one-for-one transition, or will
Right.
you actually experience some kind of reduction in your actual value? And then the other area is what kind of coordination will there be with central banks throughout the rest of the world
Hmm.
with respect to how digital currency is going to be handled?
Right.
All of that, as Mark was saying, and you were saying as well, Travis, is, it threatens our individual liberties
Yeah.
and it's anathema to the Constitution and what the founding fathers envisioned for us
Yeah.
as individuals with God-given rights.
There was and this has been probably 6 months or so ago, and I can't remember the individual's name. I believe he was one of the governors of the Bank of England, their central bank. And once in a while they let the cat out of the bag and tell actually what their intentions are. And he flat out said, I remember watching the little clip. He flat out said that, yeah, we'll be able to control your money. We'll be able to, you know, see what you're buying, and if you've spent too much money in this, maybe you've used up all your carbon, emissions numbers or whatever. You've driven too many miles. You've burned too much gas. We'll be able to cut off your supply to gasoline. If you
Yeah.
sorry, you can't buy any more gasoline. I mean, we don't know fully everything because obviously it's not here, but just the things that they're saying sound scary enough. And as I'm sure we all know, that any government, including our own, has the propensity to, well, you give them an inch, they take a mile. You open that door. It's highly unlikely that they're only going to, just put their toe in the door and leave it there. They're going to push their way all the way in eventually. And so that's the fear. um, it's not just about putting your money in gold in a bank. It's about, how do you even do business? How do you go out? If I don't want my wealth, the money that I have, if I don't want it in CBDC, well, what do I do? And this is an alternative for that.
Right. And you have, sellers and buyers, right? You have merchants and customers.
Mm-hmm.
They can be doing transactions, as Mark was saying, completely outside of that system.
Right.
This exists independent of that.
Right.
One thing I'll just quickly mention on that is that a lot of people are drawn to cryptocurrency because it has on the surface it promises some of these values of autonomy and control, reduced friction, reduced transaction fees, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about a CBDC that is also using similar technology, but it's in a very different way, where it's going to be centrally controlled.
Right.
There are techniques in the cryptosphere to to provide that kind of privacy, we do offer a gold-backed cryptocurrency for individuals who want to leverage the benefits of crypto, but stay in a private space. And so we expect to continue to offer that. It's part of the even within the UPMA platform, there's an on-ramp and an off-ramp to allow people to move into gold and silver-backed crypto currencies, but they're stable currencies. And that's a growing area that I'll just mention, but it's not something that we our main focus, but those technologies are very interesting to look at.
Right.
But they're quite dangerous if they're abused.
Yeah, one thing too, while we're winding up, and Travis, if you get feedback and questions that we didn't cover today, we can do a follow-up, or we can respond to the questions, and do whatever will help your listeners understand areas that we were too vague on, or whatever it is. We're more
it's a lot to cover. It's a lot to cover, because I know that there's more, and I don't know anywhere near as much about UPMA as you two. And I know that there's other things we could cover, but we could go on for hours. So I would love that. I would love to have both of you individually together back on, and we can cover more. I suspect there are going to be questions, and people are just I know that a lot of the listeners that's going to watch this video, they've never heard of UPMA. This whole concept, they thought that there was nothing else out there, and so this is really kind of open their mind to that. So yes, in future times, both of you are welcome anytime back on this channel to help spread the word of sound money, in inflation-free money, God's money, constitutionally sound money. That UPMA is really opening that door for anyone. Gentlemen, it's been an honor and a pleasure having you. It really has been.
Yes.
UPMA's website is www.upma.org. And that will be, you should already have seen it on the screen. Is there any final thing that either one of you want to mention?
I'll just mention there's also the www.alpinegold.com
that's correct, yes.
website, which has some complimentary information, and you can access the account portal. You can sign up from either of those websites.
Okay.
Either through Alpine Gold or UPMA.
Yeah, and they're very user-friendly websites. Our local meetings that we have, I'm not going to do it because it's YouTube here, but at our local meeting, one of my UPMA accounts actually brought it up there at the meeting, let people come and just watch, as I walked through how it functioned, how easy it is to just see your account, transfer money, make deposit. It's extremely user-friendly portal, and I really think that more people should be doing this, because it's so simple. I mean, there's all the other things that Mark and Jeff were talking about, but just the simplicity of being able to buy my groceries or to put fuel in my vehicle using gold and silver. I mean, that's a concept that many of you have dreamed of, and it's a reality right now because of the work that UPMA is doing. Again, gentlemen, it's an honor and pleasure. Thank you so much. Jeff, anything else to add to it?
Other than just thank you. Nothing else.
All right. Again, you're both welcome here anytime. Folks, this is one of the more important things we've talked about. It is time to get your houses in order. You need to be preparing mentally, physically, and spiritually. And this with UPMA and sound money, God's money, is definitely one of the ways that you can prepare for the things that are happening and that will continue to happen in our world today. Folks, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.